Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Dr. Cruz from Maximize Your Superpowers. So yesterday I made a video, and the video was on Are You Paying Attention? Right? So the video was on Are You Paying Attention? And the concept was really about, are you paying attention to what's going on in your life? Are you paying attention to what's going on in your mind? Are you paying attention to the relationships you have with people, the influences people have on you, your behaviors? Are you paying attention to whether you're happy or not? Are you paying attention? Just, are you consciously living? Really, that was my intention for that video, to get people to start thinking, am I consciously living, or am I on autopilot, which is what we're all on autopilot at some point throughout the day, right? And usually it's a large portion of the day. So as I was going through the day today, it dawned on me that I left out a huge part of Are You Paying Attention? And so this segment is on, are you paying attention to your children? Yep. Are you paying attention to your children? So this is a big deal, right? Because who is not busy these days? Everybody is busy these days. But, at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, who's raising my kids? Who's raising my kids? If I'm so busy, who's raising my kids? And so I want to share with you some personal thoughts, some statistics, some concerns, some things we need to be aware of, what they're vulnerable to, right? And also some things we can do, some tips to help educate them and to empower them, right? Because we need to pay more attention to our children, generally speaking, okay? This is not a video for you to get offended over, okay? So don't get offended. It's not about, getting offended. It's about, how can we do better? Okay, is that fair? Can we talk about how we can all do better? All right. So, first and foremost, understand that I have the best intention by creating this video, okay? And it's just to bring more awareness to us as parents, and even potentially people who are thinking about having children, right? We need to help educate the next generation of what they should get prepared for, because we can't be leaving these kids vulnerable to the vultures of the world, okay? And there are a lot of vultures in the world. I mean, there are the Harry Weinsteins. There are the Bill Cosbys of the world. There are the Larry Nazars. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. But he was the medical doctor, the physician for the Olympics, for the girls on the American Olympics team, the Team USA. He was the medical physician, and he was molesting all of those girls, hundreds, maybe thousands of them, okay? Right under the noses of parents, of faculty, of staff, university staff, all these people. And predators, are only one thing I want to talk to us or whatever about today. It's not just sexual predators. It's also other things. So let me get going. First, I want to say, I am not the same parent I am today that I was when I was 20. Okay? I didn't have the knowledge or the experience or the wisdom. I didn't understand what good parents looked like because I didn't have any parents. And so I didn't even know what parenting meant, right? I just so happened to become a parent and I had to figure it out like most people do, right? Most people get pregnant and, either they don't come from good parents themselves and they have to figure out, how do I become a better parent? Or, maybe they don't have parents at all, And so this is a big deal. This is a big topic for everybody, right? And so my philosophy is that our children are the absolute number one priority. They are the most precious creatures on this earth. They are the most precious beings of our species, of any species, our children. They are innocent creatures, these human beings, these things called babies, and they grow up to become toddlers. Toddlers grow up to be young people. Young people grow up to be teenagers, preteens, and teenagers, and young adults. And the conscious mind is not fully developed until they're about 25 years old. So they're living a whole life, 25 years, without the capacity to fully learn and know how to think smartly. Okay? That's why they need the tribe. That's why they need parents and cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents and neighbors and good teachers and all of these people in the world to help keep these children protected until they can get to a place in their own life where they can think for themselves and protect themselves. They are the most precious. These children have no fight against the predators in the world, against the bullies, against the drugs, against the marketing from these billion-dollar corporations on social media and television, all this thing. They have no protection and no fight against these vulgar lyrics in the music, right? They are susceptible to intaking everything. They are the most vulnerable thing on this planet. Your child is the most vulnerable thing on this planet. Your child's life is at stake every single day. Every single day. Every single day that they interact with someone else other than you, assuming that you're an honest, good, safe parent, because some aren't. Assuming that you are, your child is vulnerable to being damaged, to being abused, to being hurt, to being contaminated in their mind, in their body, in their spirit, in their soul, in their energy. They're vulnerable every time they interact with someone else or something else, like social media. They're vulnerable. Every time they open a book to read it, if you don't know what's in that book, your child is vulnerable to being harmed. And so it's my personal belief that we need to lift our children up with high esteem and really understand the value that these little creatures that turn into big creatures, right, our kids, that turn into us one day, adults. We need to really, really wrap our mind around how vulnerable and precious and innocent they are. They didn't ask to be here. Let's get that straight. I don't care what your philosophy is on, we picked our parents and all that kind of thing. That aside, they didn't ask to be here. So it's my philosophy now, as an adult, as a parent, that if we're going to have children, we need to do everything, not just in our power, but to do everything, period. Whether it's in your power or not in your power. But you need to do everything to protect that child, to make sure that you're thinking ahead of the predator, that you're thinking ahead of the malicious criminal, that you're thinking ahead of the bully, that you're thinking ahead of the billion-dollar marketing gurus, that you're thinking ahead of the rappers and the singers and all these people that put these vulgar lyrics into songs for your children to hear at age 2. And these videos, because now being naked is not a big deal. You got women creating these, body parts on themselves that's not naturally created and showing it freely on the internet and on TV. And your child, I'm not here to judge all that, but I'm here to remind you that your child is vulnerable. Their mind is vulnerable to the influences that they get exposed to if you, as their parent, are not on your job. And maybe no one's ever told you what your job is. I didn't know as a parent what my job was. I was just busy working and doing all this stuff and raising my daughter, right? But we have our kids out here in the world, and they have access to a bunch of other people who don't have good parents either, or who don't have attentive parents, or don't have sharp parents, or don't have involved parents. And so it becomes this cycle. If you haven't noticed lately, there's a war going on in the world, a spiritual war, and they're gunning for the mind of your kid so that they can snatch their soul. That's what's happening in the world. Through TV, through social media, through music, through bullying, through school systems, through every avenue of everything. Everything is gunning for the mind of your kid. And you got to wake up to that. Everything on this planet wants the mind of your kid. It wants the attention of your kid. It wants the attraction of your kid. It wants the attraction, like the attention of your kid. Everybody is being lured by some kind of marketing. And if we don't teach our kids how to have high self-esteem, guess who are the most vulnerable? Kids with low self-esteem. Kids with no parents. Kids with one parent. Kids without a tribe. Kids without a village. They're the most vulnerable because who's got their back? Who's in their ear saying, no, don't go over there. No, put that cigarette down. No, don't go hang out with that little boy. No, don't mess with that girl because she's about, some wild life. Don't go. Who's protecting our kids? Who's protecting your kid if you're so busy? Like most parents are. Most parents working 2 or 3 jobs. Kids are unsupervised, right? I'm not here to criticize. I'm here to inform and to remind you that everything on this planet is gunning for the mind of your kid. Because if they can control the mind of your kid, then they control the emotions of your child. And if they can control the mind and the emotions of your child, then they can do anything they want with your kid. Because now they own them. Because they're kids. They're not yet adults, right? The conscious mind doesn't fully develop until we're about 25 years old. At least in our 20s, but difference is different for girls and boys, but 25 years old. So you got 25 years there that you got to be on your job, like for real. Talking to your children, educating them, empowering them, giving them wisdom, showing them the tricks that these mentally disturbed and diabolical people in the world have up their sleeve to take advantage of the most innocent creature on this planet, which is your child, your baby. This This is your baby. I don't care how old they are. That's your baby. And you better fight tooth and nail to protect your baby. Your baby's mind, your baby's emotions, your baby's environment. You got to get everything negative out of the environment of your child, including your bad behaviors. Whew, that's a tough one. We got to look in the mirror and say, how am I ruining my child? And we got to learn how to make our children our priority. When I was in the military for 20 years, my daughter wasn't my priority. The military was my priority because I was working on a 24-hour shift. And I didn't know how to manage being that responsible in a career and also being a parent. My daughter was a priority in the sense that, I kept her fed and clothed and, she went to school and we did homework and, I raised her and I did a very good job, but I didn't do a great job. And we need to do great jobs with our children because as a single parent, I couldn't do it all. And there are so many people out here who are single parents. So I want to tell you all who have not had children yet, listen, it's unfair to be a single parent. It's unfair to your child. Sometimes we can't predict it. But if you can predict it, don't do that to your child. Your child deserves 2 healthy parents. Okay? That's my opinion. It's very difficult to be parents. In this day and age, it's very difficult. Children are the most expensive thing you're ever going to have in your life. More expensive than your home. Right? If you do parenting right. Put them through college and all that. Right? So our sons and our daughters, our children are the most precious thing in the world. So I want to talk about some statistics. I came across this website. And in the spirit of educating you, educating myself, educating our children, whoever's going to watch this video, empowering ourselves, I want to just read some things, right? So this was a Huffington Post article called 12 Confronting Child Sexual Abuse Statistics All Parents Need to Know. And so today's video is not just about sexual abuse, okay? I want to talk about bullying. I want to talk about drugs. I want to talk about other influences that are gunning for your kid's mind, right? And again, this video is just to bring awareness back to you, to me. Are you paying attention? Are you paying attention? Is your kid paying attention? Have you taught your child how to pay attention in their own life so that they can identify a villain when it approaches? Because a villain doesn't often look like a villain. A villain looks like the thing that's going to satisfy their insecurity and their emotional need if the parent doesn't provide it, as far as self-esteem and education and things like that. All right, so this one says 95% of sexually abused kids, or 95% of, through whatever statistics, surveys or whatever that this website, this particular article referenced, which is on the website. 95% of sexually abused kids were abused by someone they knew and trusted. 95%. 95% of those kids that this particular survey surveyed, 95% of the respondents, which were children, or maybe they were adults now, thinking back on their childhood, they were sexually abused by someone they knew and trusted. When I was 13, I was sexually abused by my grandfather. Someone I knew. I didn't necessarily trust him, and I didn't really necessarily know him, to be quite honest. I was put into his home after foster care as a kinship care, and so I knew him like that, but I didn't trust him because I didn't have a relationship with him. But, for all intents and purposes, he should have been someone that I could have said I know and trust because he was my grandfather. But the reality is, this is the reality, and I want you to really hear me on this. People are just people. We put these titles on them: mother, father, sister, brother, uncle, aunt, cousin, grandparents, grandmother, grandfather, teacher, best friend, husband, wife, son, daughter. We put these titles on people, and there is an expectation, a societal expectation of a behavior and a treatment that should follow because you have this title. But the truth is, there is no guarantee that a son will be a respectable son, that a daughter will be a respectful daughter, that a husband won't be the one that murders his wife, that a wife won't be the one that murders her husband, that a teacher isn't going to be the one that sexually abuses the student. There is no guarantee that these people are going to have morals and standards and be godly and not sociopaths and psychopaths. There's no guarantee. But because they have a title, even that medical physician for the Olympic teams, because he had a title and a reputation, there was this expectation that he was the best, right? That's what they all said. He's the best doctor. He's the best. He wasn't the best. He was a villain. He was a predator. He was a molester. So we got to stop putting so much hype into these titles of people and just realize people are just people. They're fallible. They're sinners. They've fallen from grace. Every last one of us have fallen from grace. Some of us just are demonic. And some of us, we don't have the Spirit of God in us. Or them, not me, I do. But you know what I mean? Like, there are people out there. Parents, my point is, wake up. Don't put so much trust and just take for granted that your kid's okay because they're going to cousin Coco's house. Okay? Because cousin Coco could be cuckoo. All right? Or cousin Coco's aunt could be cuckoo. Or cousin whoever. Right? Or grandpa. Maybe grandpa ain't the same grandpa he used to be. And so you can never really take for granted. You got to have an open line of communication with your kid. Okay? Talk to your kids. Empower them. Educate them. All right. I can't read my handwriting. I wrote it so quick. Of those molested 6 and below, so children 6 and below that were molested, 50% were molested by family members. It is those who are closest to us. Those who have the closest access to your children are the ones who are going to violate, abuse, negatively influence your children. So you gotta manage the environment that your child, the most precious creation on this earth, the thing that never asked to be here on earth, the thing that you created, you got to keep aware of their environment. What are they doing? You got to supervise. This is the most important thing. Parents need to supervise. You got to stay on top. Yeah, as they grow older, you give them a little bit of freedom, but you stay on top of it. I'm a huge proponent of, if my daughter needed to go anywhere, I would take her. I don't want nobody driving my daughter anywhere because I don't want to put her life in the hands of that driver. My child means that much to me that I will get my ass up at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was, from the skating rink, And I would go pick up the kids from the skating rink because her life is valuable. And I can't just let her drive around with anybody. I don't care they're nice people. The other kids' parents, they're nice people. But accidents happen. And I could never live with myself if I allowed my daughter to drive around with somebody else and something happened. I couldn't be that person. I couldn't be that parent. So, personal responsibility as a parent, right? Abused by older and more powerful children. Okay, so kids that get abused, they're being abused by older and more powerful people. Whether it's an older kid that's more powerful in school potentially, or an older person that's more powerful. 84% of sexual victimization of children. I don't know what the heck I wrote. Happens in residences. 12 and below. Okay. 84% of sexual victimization of children 12 and below happens in the residence. Okay. In the home. All right. It's happening under your roof. The sexual molestation is happening in your house. Hello, somebody. It's happening in your house. It happened in my house. When I lived with my grandfather, the sexual molestation was happening in the house I lived in. But because my father wasn't supervising me and wasn't taking me out and talking to me, like, hey, what's going on? Is everything okay? Blah, 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 whatever. You know, how's your grandfather treating you? That conversation never happened. I didn't see my father a whole lot. But even those that are in the home, listen, if you got someone who's on drugs in your home, you got someone who's an alcoholic in your home, you got someone who is an ex-convict in your home, you got someone that is a young, in their sexual prime kind of teenager kind of thing going on. If you got anybody who could be shady in any kind of way, shape, or form, and even if they can't be shady, if you don't think that they could be shady, but you don't think they would be shady, you still need to have 17 eyes on that kid, because that kid is your responsibility. That life is your responsibility to keep safe, to nurture, to protect, to guard with your life. That is your child. And if this particular survey says 84% of the abuse is happening in the home. Mommy, daddy, 84% of the kids in this survey are getting sexually abused in the home. By who? By somebody. By the cousin, by the neighbor, by somebody who's living there, by grandma, by grandpa, by mom, by dad. Somebody is molesting. In this particular survey, 84% of the respondents. Don't think that your kids are exempt. Just about every woman I know has been sexually violated in some way, shape, or form. I think the statistic says like 1 in 4. That's bullshit. It's a lot higher. Women, as girls, we are vulnerable to these pathological vultures. Immoral people. And they're probably the way they are because of their upbringing, because of lack of education. The one thing I'm telling you right now we need to do, we need to educate our kids. We need to inform them. We need to talk to them. We need to interact with them. We need to have a relationship with them. We need to inform them. We need to engage with them in conversation so that they can have trust in us to tell us when something is going on. Don't you know most kids won't even tell their parents? There's a statistic in here for at least a year. Whoever gets sexually violated, they don't even say anything for like a year. I didn't say anything for over a year. I was petrified out of my mind. So you got to build that relationship. You got to have that conversation with them weekly, daily, We just got to make it so that if something like this is happening in their life, obviously at different ages, it's going to, their communication with you is going to look different. But we got to make it so that the kid, your child, knows, right? I hate saying the kid. Oh my God, I hate that word. I don't even know why I'm talking like that. Your child. This is your child. It's not your kid. Kid's a goat. Kid's like, oh, that kid. No, this is your baby. This is your child. This is, the thing that you created. You got to make it so that child comes to you. You need to say out of your mouth, baby, if anything ever happens, if you're ever in any danger, if anyone tries to violate you, if anybody has any kind of suspect behavior, if your instinct, you tell your child, if your instinct or your gut tells you something ain't right, you come tell me right away. You come tell me right away. You got to tell your child, baby, you come to mommy or you come to daddy right away, and we will protect you. And we need to build our children with that kind of confidence and that kind of sense of safety, that I'm okay. No matter what happens, my mommy and my daddy are going to protect me. We have to give our children that, because they didn't ask to be here. It's your responsibility. They didn't ask to be here. So put the drugs down, put the alcohol down, put the cigarettes and the wine and the partying, and be a parent. I wish someone would have told me that. Be a parent. Because you only have so many years to protect, to mold, to influence, to guard your child from all of this trash in the world they're gunning for the mind of your baby. This is the reality. It is the reality. Nobody really talks emphatically about it though, but it's the reality. You only have so many years to guard and protect and to raise up this child. Because at some point, you lose your influence over your child. Other things in the world have more influence on them than you do as a parent. So, 98% of children abused y'all gonna stop playing with me. Who wrote these notes? 98%. I wrote them very quickly. Look. I was just writing them very quickly because I didn't want to take all night. 98% of child abuse cases reported were found to be true. That's a time. 98% of child abuse cases that were reported were found to be true. So there's some parents out there that don't believe their kids. There's kids out here that tell people, I told my mom. She didn't believe me. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that your baby will come to you, your child. See, I think that we haven't really been taught how important our children are, how precious they are, how innocent they are, how vulnerable they are. They have a brain, but they haven't been taught how to use it yet. They're children. They don't know how to think. And so they become vulnerable to everything in the world. Everything in the world has access to them if you don't protect them. So 98% of child abuse cases that were reported in this particular survey were found to be true. Your kids are probably not lying to you. If they say someone has sexually abused them, they're probably telling you the truth. Man, and if they're not telling you the truth, you got to wonder why your child would need your attention that badly. So don't you get mad at the child. One in 3 adults would not believe their child. We were just talking about this. So 1 in 3 adults will not believe their child when their child says someone has sexually abused me. Someone's molested me. Sad, man. Sad. 73% of children victims don't tell for at least a year. I told you about that already, right? Foster children and other children living without either parent, like me, remember I told you I didn't have either parent, are 10 times more likely to be sexually abused than those with biological parents. I was one of those statistics because I didn't have parents. Children living in a single parent home are 20 times more likely to be sexually abused. It's crazy. Because you see, if you don't have any parents, or if you have one parent, there's less people talking to your children. Who's talking to your children? You're out working. If you're the single parent, you're out working, right? So unless you're a real conscious parent and you're a real spiritually driven, just on top of your game kind of parent, by virtue of your situation, your child is left vulnerable. This is not a judgment against single parents, against people who didn't have parents, or it's not a judgment for anybody. Nothing in this video is to insult or degrade or hurt your feelings. None of that. This video is solely to ask, are you paying attention? Are you paying attention to your child? Are you paying enough attention to your child? Because they are the most vulnerable people on this planet. And it's our job, it's all of our jobs, to keep these children protected, to have the conversation, right? All right. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was, are you paying, that's the topic, are you paying attention to your children? So I already told you my philosophy about having kids. If you can't protect them, if you can't care for them, if you can't pay for their food, if you don't have housing for them, if you can't be a decent parent, don't have kids. It's not for you, okay? Don't go buy a dog if you can't buy dog food. Because part of the responsibility of having an animal is caring for the animal, right? And part of the responsibility of having a child, most of the responsibility is to care for the child, to raise the child, to expose the child to proper things. If you can't do that, don't have kids. Okay? Just don't. They didn't ask to be here. Stop bringing them into this world if you can't do your job. I was watching a reality show the other day, and the guy infuriated me so badly because he's an idiot. He's a moron. And his name is Young Dirty Bastard, the son of Old Dirty Bastard. You're a freaking idiot. He is a moron, moronic idiot. He has nothing here. He's stupid. He wants to impregnate every woman. What are you, a fool? Do you hear yourself? So there are people in this world that think that they should, we're here to procreate. Okay, great. But if you can't raise your child properly, you're not just here to procreate and bounce. You're here to raise your children and to make them healthy, productive citizens in this world. Not to leave them to be heartbroken, to be lonely, to be fatherless. There's only so much of one parent that can go around. You cannot properly raise 15 kids, DMX. Right? These men out here and these women. I had a cousin, she kept having babies on drugs, just having babies and giving them away to somebody else to raise. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's the worst thing. Listen, go screw your own life up, but don't do it to the children. I am so serious with this topic because I know better now. And I want to inform people, are you paying attention to your children? Okay? You can't just have kids and go away. You got to raise them or don't have kids. Okay? People are so egotistical. Oh, I want a little kid that looks just like me so I can see myself in the little kid. Look at yourself in the mirror. See yourself there. Okay? Do something about this person. Don't make another person and screw their life up too. All right. Let me get me started. I asked the Lord to get me out of my shell when I speak, but y'all don't want to see old Capri come back. Okay. Let me see. Vulnerable. What are our kids vulnerable to? Okay, I gotta wrap up. Let me wrap this up. Our kids are vulnerable to negative influences. People, TV, music, everything, social media, you name it, is a negative influence potentially. Negative thoughts. Talk to your kids about their own thoughts. They're vulnerable to their own negative thoughts. Are you paying attention to your kids and what they're thinking? What do they think? What do they think about themselves? Right? After a day in school, there's a lot of probably judgments going on in their head. Maybe they didn't feel they were smart enough. Maybe they didn't pass the test. Maybe they didn't feel that they were competitive enough. Maybe they didn't feel that they were tall enough or pretty enough or smart enough. You know, you got to have a conversation. What are their thoughts telling them? Okay? This is where you're going to get the inclination, whether they're depressed or have anxiety or low self-esteem or thinking of suicide. If you don't have the conversation, you don't get the clues. Our kids are vulnerable to boys. So our girls are vulnerable to boys. I don't know. Boys are vulnerable to boys. Everybody's vulnerable to boys. Okay? This is not to villainize boys, but they are a unique creature. Okay? Boys are boys. They have a penis and they can impregnate girls. Okay? That's the reality of it. And many of them, you know, unless they're taught, you know, there's a reason they call bad boys, right? Yeah, there are bad girls out there, but let's keep it real, okay? Men, boys, the male species can be very influential on a young girl's emotions, right? And her mind and her identity. So make sure you build your child up with high self-esteem so no little boy could come into her mind, infiltrate, and contaminate her identity. You have to build your daughter's identity and build it so strongly. This is why good fathers are so important. Because if you have a good father, then you're not as vulnerable to these losers out here. Okay? Drugs. Our kids are vulnerable to drugs. Drugs are everywhere. Drugs are in schools. Drugs are in prisons. Drugs are at jobs. Drugs are, I don't even know. They're everywhere, right? So you got to have the conversation with your kid. Why it's not good to smoke marijuana. It's not good to smoke marijuana. I don't care what anybody says. You don't know what they're lacing the stuff with. You don't know where it's being grown. You don't know where it's flying in from. You don't know anything about that stuff you're ingesting. This mind-altering substance you're ingesting. Okay? Even if you do know about it, listen, these are kids. Teach your kids to stay off of drugs. If they grow up to be an adult and they want to do drugs, then that's their adult decision. You've done everything you can to educate them, but do everything you can to educate them. Jennifer Lopez said she didn't smoke cigarettes and do drugs and all of that or drink. Specifically smoke cigarettes because her mom said she would die. Her mom told her, don't smoke cigarettes because you're going to die. It's going to kill you. Don't smoke. And so she never smoked. That's influence. We got to have that influence over our kids' minds. Because if you don't influence your kids' mind, guess who's influencing your kids' minds? The vultures, the predators, the marketing billion-dollar companies on social media. We're leaving them vulnerable to sexual molestation. We're leaving them vulnerable to the Harry Weinsteins, to the Bill Cosbys, to the Larry Nazars, to sex trafficking, to smoking cigarettes, to bullying, to falling for scams. There's so many scams out here. And it takes one idiot to introduce an idiotic scam to your child who has an underdeveloped mind, who will then say, okay, let's go do that. So if you don't have the conversation with them to tell them what to look out for, they're vulnerable to that. Okay? Sex videos. Teach your kids. Like, there's so many kids that are having sex on school buses and oral sex and just all kinds of craziness in school systems, on school buses, in the street. Just talk to your kids about not putting any of that. Don't do that stuff, period. But definitely don't put it on video, because there's a lot of schools where videos are being released on these private websites for the kids, that only the students know about, underground stuff. So we got to educate our kids that there's malicious stuff like that out there, because your kid might not even know. Your kid might be vulnerable because they're looking to feel loved, or to feel liked, or to feel included, peer pressure or whatever. And so maybe there's a bet on the school bus, like, if you do this, if you have oral sex with this person and you let us videotape it, we'll give you X, Y, and Z. And so if we're not teaching our kids how to have morals and standards, they may be vulnerable to that type of temptation. And now your kid gets videotaped and they get put out there and they can't handle it. And what happens? Maybe they kill themselves, right? Because we didn't have the conversation. So you got to have the conversation. Are you paying attention to your kids, to your children? I hate that word, kids. We're leaving them vulnerable to threats at school, to peer pressure, to pornography online. Every time I click on something, there is a pornographic site that pops up. I'm like, what the hell? Or if I Google something, there's some kind of like weird sex advertisement over here. It's everywhere. So please monitor your children's online activity. Don't just take for granted, oh, here's a laptop, go play. No, because you don't know what they're getting into. You got to monitor it, okay? Educate your kids. Empower your kids. Give them the information so that they can protect themselves when you're not around. Encourage your children to talk to you, to report odd behavior by anyone anytime they have an inkling about something that they feel like they're second guessing. Like, this doesn't feel right? Our kids have intuition. They may not know with intelligence whether something is right or wrong or legal, illegal, whatever at the time, depending on their age, but we all have instinct, okay? And so tell them if their instinct is off, to get away from that situation, period, and then to come tell you about it. And explain to them that you're there to help protect them, not to get them in trouble. You're not going to fuss at them. You're not going to yell at them. Even if they do something horrible, leave it open so that they can come tell you about it, okay? Tell them you're not there to chastise them, to beat them, to punish them, to hurt them. You're there so that they can come talk to you so you can protect them and educate them and keep them safe. Give them examples of what's inappropriate, especially with family members. Listen, it's okay to go hug grandpa, but don't be sitting on grandpa's leg for too long. You know what I mean? Or Uncle John. Like, don't be sitting on Uncle John's leg, especially with a dress on. You got to tell your kids. You got to be on top of that, okay? Your children. Why do I keep saying kids? It's that stupid show I watch. See? I'm influenced by a show I watched. The stupid lady said kids, and it got stuck in my head. But it's my responsibility to stop saying that word, because I don't like that word. So you have to give your children examples of what's inappropriate, okay? Supervise them, what they're doing online. Help them create a spiritual identity. Oh my God. I am going to end this video, because if not, I am going to go in on spirituality. Let me tell you something. As a psychotherapist, as a substance abuse counselor, as a therapist who worked in a psychiatric hospital, I have worked with a lot of different populations. And the one common denominator for the people who have the most horrible lives is that they don't have a spiritual identity. And most of them don't believe in God or are angry at God. Okay? So please help your child create a spiritual understanding of who they are. I don't care if you call it God or Jesus or the universe or the universal mind or the quantum field or, I don't care what you call it, but help them to understand that they are energy. They are a spiritual being, okay? When someone dies, their energy dies. It stops. All the machines at the hospital go, like that. You're dead. That means there's nothing in your body working anymore, okay? That is energy. That is a magnetic field. You are a spiritual person. You know this because you feel things. You have instinct. You have inclination. On top of that, there are spiritual belief systems, okay? And so help your child understand who they are. Give them the option to pick who they want to be spiritually, but guide them wisely. Okay? That means you need to have a spiritual understanding of who you are. Okay? I found my identity through the Word of God. Not the cattle, not whatever they believe in another country or whatever the case is in certain countries that it's just I'm not here to judge. I'm just telling you what I found my identity in. When my parents didn't give me an identity and I didn't understand who I was as a human being and what was going on in my life, I found my identity through the Word of God. That I am a child of the Most High God and that God as a creator created me. Therefore, I too am a creator. Therefore, that's why we speak of manifestation so much. And revelation of wisdom, right? Whenever you're like meditating or you're at peace, you get an idea. That's a revelation, right? Spiritually, it's a revelation. So, please help your children get a spiritual identity, okay? I promote believing in Jesus Christ as my Savior. Who would I be if I didn't know I was already forgiven for everything I've already done wrong and anything I'll ever do wrong because I've asked for forgiveness? That's so important because don't you know there's so many people out here that live in guilt and shame. Your children are living in guilt and shame and they don't have to. They don't have to. Not because they're egotistical, but because spiritually they have been forgiven, right? And so knowing the Word of God has really aligned me properly so that I do things that promote my health and well-being and the health and well-being of other people, that I'm a productive person in society, that I have a purpose and a mission, that I'm not just here for gluttony and sloth and narcissistic reasons, right? That's not why we're here. It's not all about us. Because it's truly through giving that we receive. Because it's love that we all need. Love heals all. And suffering, most of our suffering comes from the inner dialogue that we're having about the judgments and the criticisms and the criticisms and the unforgivingness and the anger. But through a good spiritual understanding of who you are, you realize you don't have to suffer from all of that because the battle is the Lord's, right? So I'm not here to convert you, but I am here to explain to you what worked for me. And that worked for me. Who would I be without understanding who I am in the Lord? I would be a prisoner because I would have been killed somebody. I had a rough life, okay? So I had to understand that's not godly. That's not the way it works. That's not what we do. We have to forgive people, right? Vengeance is the Lord's. All right. So please help your child get a spiritual identity so that they don't end up cutting themselves and trying to commit suicide because they're losing their mind. They don't know what to do because the worst thing in the world has happened to them. Or they've done something that they feel is the worst thing in the world or the stupidest thing in the world. And now they have to suffer through that consequence. And they can't deal with it. Their identity, their ego, their self-esteem is not strong enough. They don't know as a human being how to handle it. Certain things as human beings we don't know how to handle. We have to handle it in the spirit so that it doesn't dominate, control, and destroy us in the flesh. You got to have a spiritual understanding of who you are and what gifts have been given to you. The gift of forgiveness, right? The gift of creation. That the power of life and death is in the tongue. That the words you speak over your life create energy, create circumstances, create reality. Your children need to know their power is a spiritual being so that they don't go in the corner in the bathroom and shut the door and cut, right? How many of our little girls are cutters? Do y'all know what I'm talking about, cutters? Little girls that take knives and razors and they cut their skin. They cut their legs. They cut places people can't see, the inner thigh. Because they can't deal with what's going on in their mind. Because their mind is weak. When you're not spiritually strong, your mind is weak. Period. You could think you're as strong as you want to think you are. But when you hit, or that situation hits you, when you hit rock bottom, your mind is weak in the flesh. But if you have a strong spiritual understanding of who you are, you can have perfect peace beyond human understanding. That's the power of having a spiritual identity. To know that you are not your mistakes. All right. Teach your children morals to keep them in line of goodness. Okay? When you have morals and you hang around people that have morals, you're going to get in less trouble, right? Our children will get in less trouble when they have morals because they're not going to do certain things. They're not going to go over here and do this activity because the morals are here. This is not part of their identity. This is their identity. So teach them to have morals and teach them to have friends who have morals. Okay? Very important. And understand the importance between good and bad behaviors, why it matters. So teach your children the importance of good and bad behaviors and why it matters. Increase their self-esteem and put them in therapy. You know, if you don't have time to talk to them, maybe they don't want to talk to you personally, you know, if they're a teenager or whatever, put them in therapy. Find some therapy. Get them a counselor so that they have somebody they can build rapport with over time and trust. And they can go to that person and say, hey, I did this. I don't know what to do. And you trust that that counselor knows how to guide your child properly. That's important too. Don't just trust a counselor because it's a counselor. Go sit in on some sessions with your kid, with your child. Or go in by yourself and have a conversation with the therapist to make sure that they know what they're doing. Don't take for granted somebody has a title. They're a therapist, so they're good. No. Vet them. Interview them. Ask them questions. Make sure their thinking is appropriate and in line. Look at their history. Look at their, how long have they been in business, and look them up on the Better Business Bureau website or whatever. The question is, are you paying attention? Okay? Ask yourself. When you go to bed at night, ask yourself, am I paying attention to my child? Could I have done something better today? What can I do better tomorrow to protect my children? Don't beat yourself up. Just fix it. Their life depends on it. I'm Dr. Cruz with Maximize Your Superpowers, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.